Hi Sam and Lucy, and welcome to this presentation outlining my research proposal. The area that I plan to research falls under the umbrella of gifted education, and during this presentation I will take you through the research problem, questions, my chosen design and methodology, as well as how I intend to gather and analyse data. I hope by the end of this slideshow that you will have a clear picture of why I chose this issue and how I plan to investigate it. The research problem. According to the Commonwealth of Australia Senate Inquiry of 1988, quote, gifted children are currently among the most disadvantaged students, end quote, in the country. 29 years on, not much has changed in our classrooms to address this. In fact, while teachers and educators might know more about this group than in previous years, the current trend in education reveals that gifted children remain one of the most underserved groups in heterogeneous classrooms. Erroneous assumptions that view gifted students among the last students who require attention to their special needs have done and are doing harm to this subset of learners. In fact, gifted children require motivation and support from educators if they are to develop fully. In some schools, gifted learners are catered to through pull-out programs, acceleration and skipping grades, or homogeneous grouping and specialist education teachers. However, in Australia, ability grouping and acceleration are among the most controversial and least used special education provisions for gifted students. Because of this, the increasing trend in both Australia and overseas is to educate gifted learners within mixed needs or heterogeneous classrooms. As a result, research has found that differentiation in mixed needs classrooms is necessary if gifted learners are to be accommodated. Unfortunately, the practice of differentiating for gifted learners in regular classrooms is rarely applied by teachers. Although there is a large body of work that has uncovered and pioneered effective teaching models for differentiating curriculum and instruction to cater to gifted learners in regular classrooms, research has shown that strategies for differentiation are only being implemented on a limited scale in mixed needs classrooms. The implications for gifted learners who are not receiving differentiated instruction are generally negative. Studies have shown that without challenging curricula, gifted learners can regress or underachieve, become reticent, experience high stress levels, and reduce belief in their academic capabilities, as well as act out behaviourally and fail to meet their potential. So far, we've established that gifted learners in mixed needs classrooms benefit from having instructions catered to them, and that teachers hardly do this. You might be wondering why this is. Well, two broad categories have emerged from the literature surrounding this topic to explain why teachers don't cater to this group well. The first category we can call internal barriers. Internal barriers consist of things like incorrect assumptions about how gifted students learn, apathy or even opposition to gifted learning, and also a teacher's perception of their own ability to teach gifted students. The second category relates to external barriers, and they are things which, as the name suggests, fall outside a teacher's control. For example, a lack of time, lack of access to resources, lack of whole school policies or support from the school administration, and a lack of training and professional development in this area. So, to conclude this section, the research problem, so to speak, is the problem of teachers not being able to provide differentiation to gifted learners. The research questions. As a teacher myself, the research topic is pertinent to me as I've personally experienced the challenges of differentiating the curriculum for gifted students in a mixed needs classroom, especially at the middle school level. Also, while much training at both work and uni was provided in order to learn how to differentiate and scaffold the curriculum for special needs learners with the aim of ensuring equity and an equally accessible learning experience, little to none was provided to me on the topic of accommodating gifted learners. This experience experience is not unique, and in fact it's consistent with the finding that the considerable majority of teachers currently employed in Australian schools would have had no instruction, or at best less than 1 hour of instruction, in their pre-service training on how to identify and respond to gifted and talented students. The purpose of this study, then, is to identify and describe those factors which teachers feel most limit their ability to differentiate curriculum for gifted learners in a mixed needs secondary classroom. External factors in particular have been researched, but not in any great depth. Also, while much literature currently exists for applying differentiation in the primary school setting, little has been provided at the secondary level to help high school teachers find ways to make differentiation a reality. And because of this, I've decided to narrow the scope of my study to differentiating for gifted students in a mixed needs secondary classroom. Here are the questions that I have produced that will frame my study. 1. How supported do teachers feel to extend gifted students in secondary classrooms? 2. Are teachers providing differentiation for gifted students in their mixed needs classrooms? 3. Do teachers believe differentiation should be provided? 4. Is there a discrepancy between teachers' beliefs and practices? And 5. What are teachers' perceived and actual barriers to differentiation? As Amos Hatch notes in his book on doing qualitative research in education settings, research questions are often refined and sometimes changed during the course of qualitative studies. And I think my questions might change slightly as I'm undertaking the research, but these questions I've identified here are enough to guide and frame my research for now. Research methodology and design. This study is qualitative in nature, as it requires human thought and interpretation to adequately describe the data gathered from people's words and actions. There are no deductive hypotheses that precede this study, as there would need to be in a quantitative one. Hatch describes the focus of qualitative study as the lived experiences of real people in real settings, and understanding teachers' thoughts and behaviours in relation to gifted education, I believe, correlates with this focus. More specifically, participant observation as a methodology has been chosen as the framework for this research into gifted education. Features of this methodology that are pertinent to my study are the following. 1. It is narrower in scope than other methodologies. 2. It suits researchers who have specific questions or interests that focus their studies, as I do. 3. They are time-friendly. 4. They fit into any paradigm. In this case, my study fits into the critical paradigm, which acknowledges my epistemological and ontological stance, that research is to be interpreted by the researcher and thus cannot be fully objective. Also, a critical paradigm seeks to raise awareness about particular issues. In this case, I am trying to raise awareness of the lack of equity gifted learners have in the classroom. Data collection. Before I outline the methods of data collection I will be relying on, I will address where and with whom the research will take place. Research participants could include teachers, school administrators, and teachers in leadership positions. Both novice and expert teachers would be included. The number of teachers depends on how many would be willing to be involved in the qualitative study, but will not be less than 12. As Hatch notes, the fewer the participants, the more time must be spent with each one. My aim is to focus on depth, not breadth, to answer my research questions. The question of setting and context is also an important one. This research would be conducted in an independent secondary school in regional Victoria that does not currently have any differentiation policies in place for gifted students. In terms of data collection, semi-structured interviews, focus groups, classroom observations, and policy documents on gifted education would all be suitable methods for gathering information. Data analysis. Thematic analysis will likely be the method of analysis used to draw meaning from the data I gather. This is useful for my study as it allows me to derive themes deductively from my framing research questions and prior theory. However, it is more balanced than other methods of analysis because it also allows room for me to identify themes that occur inductively from the field notes. Specifically, I will be using thematic analysis networks, which are practical visual tools designed by Attrad Sterling for breaking up text, which will be the majority of my data as collected from interviews, focus groups, lesson observations, and policy documents over the 8 to 10 weeks I will be conducting the study. Thematic networks propose that 3 classes of themes, basic, organizing, and global, can be used to organize data and aid interpretation. In a process of coding, basic themes should emerge first. Once the basic themes are identified, they are then sorted into recurring categories, or organizing themes, which are more broad. Finally, these are sorted into global themes, which are overarching concepts that emerge from and make sense of the data.
This brings us to the end of the presentation. Thank you for watching and thank you for your time.